so much about him, and you never stop talking about him. And then, of course, all of your musical exploits seem to continually cross paths with your brother, Matt. I'm wondering if you could just, if we could talk just a little bit about the impact that your family, that your father and your brother have had on your musical career and your musical path, and how you think that maybe has changed the trajectory of it, compared to maybe if they weren't as involved.
What a great question, Caleb. Thanks so much. And today it's crazy that you're mentioning my dad, Bud Bissonette, because today, if he were still alive, he would be 89 years old, November 11th, Veterans Day. He was a veteran. He played in the U.S. Army Jazz Band in Italy. And he said, I don't want to shoot and kill anybody. I don't want to be on the front lines. What can I do? What do you do? Well, I play drums. You're in the band. So my dad, Italy, northern Italy, in Trieste, where he was stationed, was to protect at the time, and I'm just going to talk about history. I know you can't get too political in 2020, but the Italians had asked the Americans to come over in the early 50s and protect northern Italy from the Russians coming through Yugoslavia. So my dad was playing every day, and he had a little quartet, and he played for all the guys and the mess halls and just entertainment, just playing bebop, playing jazz, playing Charlie Parker songs. Okay, so that was his Army gig. He had to go out and shoot a few bazookas into the air, like not at anybody, but just practice. You had to do that. But he was a drummer. My dad played the drums. My mom played the vibes, and they had a band back in Detroit where I grew up. And my brother Matt used to play bass with my dad's band. He got his start playing with my dad's band. I got my start playing drums with my dad's band. He'd say, okay, you play Joy to the World and Proud Mary, because I don't want to play those rock songs. I just want to play Girl from Ipanema and Satin Doll. My sister, very musical, she works for a big entertainment industry company out here. They own the Greek Theater. They do Coachella. And she's the office manager for AEG Live, a big promotions company. My kids, Noah, who's 22, he's not a kid anymore. He plays drums and sings and DJs. My daughter, Mary, she's 19. She plays drums and is a vocal music major and writes songs. And yeah, my brother, Matt, we grew up playing bass and drums together. And we were in Maynard Ferguson's band together. He got the gig first in 1981, and then I joined in 82. And we played together for a year with Maynard Ferguson's big band. Then we moved out here to LA, and Matt started playing with Julian Lennon, John Lennon's son, Rick Springfield. We were in David Lee Roth's band together when Billy Sheehan left the David Lee Roth band. My brother Matt got the gig. We were in Ringo's Roundheads band. He has a band called Ringo and the Roundheads. The Roundheads were sort of the roving youth gang that beheaded King Charles and carried his King Charles Spaniel around on a plate so that the people would know, wow, that they really did kill King Charles, because nobody got close to his Spaniel. We were Ringo and the Roundheads in 2003. Then I joined Ringo's All-Star Band in 2008. Matt joined Elton John's band for the last 9 years. He's the bass player with Elton John. And so super musical family. My sister-in-law, Sharia, she's a great singer. My brother Matt and Sharia met going up where Space Mountain is. You go up out of the ground and you play top 40 tunes. She was a singer, he was a bass player. And then he said, hey, Gordon, come here. I want to introduce you to somebody. He introduced Gordon Goodwin to his wife of their kids. And he said, you guys should get married. Well, they did. That was like 1983, I think, after we were with Maynard. Anyway, so super musical family, tons of stories. I'll talk forever if you let me. So you can be as specific as you want, and I'll try to be as specific because we only have an hour.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your dad. I mean, how did his drumming and his career influence you at a young age, and and did that impact your choice of playing the drums?
Absolutely. I knew that, my dad, I just have, nothing to say in a negative way about my upbringing and my family. It's always like, well, lay on the couch. Tell me about your parents. Well, all I can do is rave about my parents because they inspired us to be musicians. I would go down in the basement, because in Detroit, Michigan, you've got basements. Out here in California, we have garages. That's why it's called garage bands. I would go down in the basement and play my dad's drums at 6 years old, because my dad was my hero, not just as a musician, but as a man, as a father, as a guy that I respected, as a capitalist working his butt off guy that had a bread route in Detroit, in the worst areas and the best areas of the Detroit area. He'd get up at 4:30 in the morning and go on his truck and sell bread. And then he'd play gigs at night. And that working class element that I still have today. If I'm not working and making a living for my kids and I'm not a happy guy. So he instilled that. But I wanted to play drums because my dad played drums. My dad played first base on the Montgomery Ward's softball team because he sold shoes for Montgomery Ward's and another job he had. Always working jobs. My mom was always working jobs. Her biggest job was a homemaker, taking care of the house and cleaning and getting us ready for bed. What are you going to wear tomorrow? Here's breakfast. Get off to school. Then she'd go work as a secretary at an insurance company. Then she'd come home on the weekends and she'd play jazz vibes with my dad's band, and my aunt and uncle would come over and babysit. So that musician, working class, let's play music and that'll be our release, got me going. So my dad and I, after dinner, he'd go, let's go dig some jazz. And we'd take album covers and put it down on the shag carpeting in the living room and put on Dave Brubeck, Paul Desmond, Joe Morello and play with brushes on the album covers. He got me into Buddy Rich, to Maynard Ferguson. My parents, the first show they ever took me to, I was about 10 years old. Well, no, the first show I ever went to was the Beatles. My dad got tickets for us, my brother and I, to go see the Beatles. I was 7, my brother was 5. It was 1966. They played in Detroit, Michigan, at the hockey arena where the Detroit Red Wings played. And I couldn't believe I was in the same room with John, Paul, George, and Ringo. The second show my dad took us to was the Count Basie Orchestra with Eddie Lockjaw Davis and Rufus Jones. And we went to see Buddy at least once a year. And Maynard, I knew at about 12 years old that my dream, I was a minor trumpet player. I'm still kind of a hack trumpet player. I love playing trumpet, but I can't play anything really well over a high D above the staff, and anything over 4 sharps or 4 flats, I can't read very well, and I can't solo and improvise. But besides that, I'm the best third trumpet player. I have good time as a 4th trumpet player in the band. My time is good, and my tone is But anyway, he took us to see Maynard, and I remember looking at Maynard on the stage. He's playing at a high school theater, and our eyes just kind of met. I was in the front row, and I was going like this, going, I'm going to be in your band someday. I'm going to be your drummer someday. And every night before I go to bed and I'd say my prayers, I'd say, Lord, please help me be Maynard Ferguson's drummer someday. And my other prayer was, I'd love to be a drummer that's known around the world. And I didn't know there'd be a modern drummer in 1977, 5 years later when I'd graduate high school. But I got in modern drummer. I got in Maynard's band. Now I'm with Caleb and we're talking to musicians around the world. So, I'm a big believer in prayer, and I had a great family that encouraged me, and I know I'll talk forever. So next question.
No, that's fantastic. So let's hit the Beatles. That's a great place to start. So okay. Your first concert you go to is the Beatles. I think anybody would have a hard time arguing that they were the most important band of the last century. And there you witness Ringo Starr, considered to be one of the greatest drummers of all time. And here you find yourself being the drummer in the band of Ringo Starr. Like, what kind of pressure is that? I mean, I can't even imagine, Greg, that the weight that you must feel when you take the stage with Ringo and you're sitting in the drum chair. What's that like? And what kind of pressure do you feel, or how do you handle that?
That's a great question. I don't feel any pressure, and I'm going to tell you why. Because again, I don't want to get too preachy, but you're asking me, and I'm going to tell you, I prayed about the Maynard gig. I prayed about the David Lee Roth gig. I prayed that I could play with Ringo or Paul someday, right? And so I get the call at about midnight to go down to Santa Monica and do a a recording for Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, and it's the producer, Mark Hudson. I said, wow, you're producing Steven Tyler. Yeah, we need you on drums. I said, I'll be there 10 in the morning. I'm about 45 minutes away. He said, we need you now. I said, you need me now? It's midnight. I said, he said, well, I just finished producing Ringo's 4th album and his drums are still set up. You can use his drums. I said, I will be right there. Hung up the landline, bolted down to Santa Monica. And instead of just doing a normal drum check, like, okay, kick drum for 5 minutes. Okay, let's hear that snare. Well, your toms are ringing. I said, forget that. I'm going to play for Mark. And Bruce Sugar, his engineer, who is Ringo's engineer to this day, who recommended me to Mark. I said, I'm going to play every classic Ringo groove I know. And this is why I believe the Beatles are the best band of my lifetime and of the last 100 years and probably the next 100 years because of the songwriting, the musicianship. They played on their own albums. They didn't have session guys playing. They played on their own albums. They wrote their own songs. They did some covers. But Ringo's grooves weren't just, a standard beat or loop. He played musically for the songs. So I played come together. I played Tomorrow Never Knows. I played bloom black in this sound check, Ticket to Ride. I played There Are Places I Read. I played the drum solo on the end of Abbey Road. The 8-bar drum solo. Anyway, Mark Hudson came in the room and he said, Matt, I've heard for years you're a Ringo fanatic. I know you do seminars, clinics all over the world telling the world how Ringo's your favorite drummer. You really are a Ringo fanatic. If his son, Zach, who plays drums in The Who, can't do this promo tour for Ringo's new album because he's out with The Who, you got the gig. I said, it's that easy? He said, well, Ringo will respect my opinion and I'm going to tell him all about you. And does your brother have a Hofner bass? I said, does my brother have a Hofner bass? Of course he does. We have a Beatle tribute band called The Lads with Brett Tuggle and Rocket Rashad. We play in the San Fernando Valley. He said, well, if you get the gig, he's going to be the bass player. A week later, he said, Ringo's son, Zach, is going out with The Who. You got the gig. Tell your brother to bring his Hofner. Ringo's in the room. My dad, Bud, happy birthday today, Bud. He'd be 89 today, born in 1931. He came out to my car. He said, Greg, I set your drums up. He was my drum tech, my cartage guy. And they're 5 feet away from Ringo's Ludwigs. Oh my gosh. It wasn't pressure. It was excitement and joy and real joy because Ringo's a very loving guy. He always says peace and love, and it is not an act. He's about peace, not what happened yesterday, what's going to happen tomorrow. Right now, I'm on with my good friend, Caleb Chapman, who's clean shaven. I almost didn't recognize him. And it's about right now, not tomorrow, not yesterday. Anyway, and he's about love. He cares about his band, his friends, his family, everything. So anyway, I went in there and I went to shake Ringo's hand. He gives me this big hug and he says, I only give hugs. I said, I'm so excited to be in your band. And he said, I hear you go around the world telling drummers how great I am. You got to be in the band. and my brother and I never looked back. We just had the best time. And then in 2008, he said, I'd love to have you in the other band, the All-Star Band, but you got to have a couple hit songs that you sang. Well, I don't have any hit songs that I sang. I'm a sideman drummer and happy to say that. Working class musician, drummer. I love playing all styles of music, but especially the Beatles. And I said, well, that'll never happen. And we laughed. Well, a year later, 2 years later, his manager called and said, Ringo's run out of drummers with top 10 hits. He loves playing double drums with you. He wants you in the All-Star Band. And that was 2008. And by the grace of God, for the last 12 years, Caleb, I've been on every tour. And I just thank God so much for that. And hopefully we're going to be back out in 2021 touring again.
Well, I'm a big believer in, in spirituality and asking the higher power for help. I'm also a big believer in the fact that that God helps those who help themselves. And if it wasn't for your talent, Greg, and your work ethic, and I think everybody watching this right now, obviously they don't know you the way I know you, but I'm sure even in the few minutes we've been talking today, they can feel how authentic and how loving you are, Why don't you comment on that just for a second? One thing that we talk about with our Soundhouse musicians and spend a lot of time on is that it really doesn't matter how great your musical chops are if your ability to get along with people and just be a wonderful human being falls short. No amount of talent or chops or musicianship are going to make up for people not wanting to be around you. Can and you're one that has, you're one of the greatest of all time as a human and as a player.
Well, Caleb, thank you so much. I'd love to talk about that aspect right there. Yeah, I believe that my talents, were God-given. My parents were super musical. I had music around the house 24/7. Your environment, that's a big part of it too. But I practiced a lot, and I still practice a lot. I've got my 8-bar Bill Stewart 8s on John Scofield's song "We." It starts at 6 minutes and 53 seconds. And last night I spent 2 hours in here trying to figure out how the hell Bill Stewart's doing what he's doing, because it's like, what is this, man? He's one of my favorite jazz drummers. And so I just, I love to practice. And if God gives you talent and you don't really put it to, God helps those who help themselves, man, you just nailed it. If you just have that talent, but you don't really do anything with it, well, okay. If you have that talent, you practice your butt off and you really get to a certain point, that other element that you just mentioned, Caleb, that other side of the pie, if you take the pie and you cut it in half, that other 50% has nothing to do with your God-given talent or how much you practice or how much you listen or your family influence or who you play with or your band director or your private teacher. It has to do with what kind of person are you? Are you a person that complains about everything? Are you somebody that kind of puts people down? The overused word, I think, is bullied, but that's like the guy on the baseball field that beats kids up. You can be a bully by just being a real jerk and putting people down and insulting them and making them feel bad. So you think that makes you look good about their playing, about their tempo, about their time, about anything. That doesn't make you look good, man. It makes you look bad. It makes you look insecure, because most bullies are very insecure people. And anyway, we won't get into that so much, but if you complain, you put people down, if you're not thankful and grateful, 2 really great words, Thanksgiving's coming up, being thankful, saying thanks, and being grateful. By the grace of God, I support my family, and all I've ever done is play the drums, okay? And that's a combination of a lot of things. Yeah, God-given talent, environment, my parents being musical, a lot of practice, a lot of great middle school, high school, college band directors, private teachers, situations, mentors. But it's also something my parents taught me young. They say, well, these kids came knocking on my door. And my dad said, yeah, I was about 12. And they said, hey, we hear Gregg is a really good young drummer. We want him in our band. And my dad goes, have you guys been smoking pot? And these kids split, okay? They were about 16 and they wanted me in their band. And my dad closes the door. He goes, Gregg, I'm a jazz musician. I've seen it all. And I'm telling you, these guys, you're in middle school, like 7th grade, these 10th, 11th graders, they're high right now. I go, what do you mean high? He goes, I could smell marijuana on them. I go, you got to be kidding me, Dad, really? He goes, yeah, I wouldn't hang around those guys. Hang around guys that, are your age. I go, well, the players my age aren't that good. He goes, well, find some guys who are older, who are straight arrow, who aren't clouded and who aren't, he said, marijuana is a pathway drug, man. Talk to musicians in downtown Detroit about, yeah, maybe that won't kill you, but what it leads to could kill you. So I just never did drugs because of that. My mom said the same thing. They were around all that stuff. You kidding me? In the 40s and 50s in Detroit, Michigan? Come on. Coltrane, Charlie Parker, they played Detroit and New York, especially Elvin Jones, Detroit, New York. So anyway, they taught me a great lesson, and they said, you want to be around people, you want to lift them up. And my brother always jokes with me. He says, whenever I do sessions with you, you're always making people feel good. You're always telling jokes. You're always trying to keep it light. you're always playing your parts and you work on your reading, and your reading's good and your time's good. But more than that, not more than that, half of that is people like being around you. I remember on Maynard Ferguson's band, we were on a bus and I was 22, my brother was 20, and we had guys in there that were my age now. I'm 61. Actually, Maynard was probably 55 then. But, there could be some dark people on those buses, the Kenton band, the Woody band, Maynard Ferguson, Buddy's band, Duke Ellington's band was still touring, Count Basie's band, people that, would just hit the bottle and then get on the stage and then almost fall off their chair. And then they'd get back on the bus and they'd call their wife from a payphone and then they have an argument. And there was a lot of drama. There's a lot of darkness. If you can be a light in those situations, it means the world. And people will want you on their band. They'll want you on their bus or their private plane or their recording session, because we need to lift each other up in this world. There's enough darkness.
Yeah, amen to that. Yeah, and of course, I think that holds true for everything, right? Not just music. I mean, we gravitate towards people that bring light, that lift us up, that bring joy, and that's what living's about, right? Is finding those people.
I have a lot of, my dad came to the first NAMM show with me when he and my mom moved to LA in '89. And afterwards, we were driving home and he said, "This is kind of weird, but I saw you hug and know people by name and know their girlfriend's name or their wife's names or their kids." And I stopped counting around 2,000. He said, "That is just crazy." I said, "Well, Dad, that's Los Angeles. In Detroit, it's a great music town, Motown, but there's only so many working professional musicians. How many sessions are there? How many gigs? How many tours go out of Detroit? This is Los Angeles, and it's the music, the entertainment capital of the world. They do movies here, TV shows here, tours go out of here. They do albums here. They do all the demos. People move here to do their demos and go to Hollywood. So anyway, I said, this is LA. It's the biggest city you could ever imagine. He goes, "There's 6 lanes on the freeway." I said, "Dad, the thing about it is there's an incredible music community in the world, and everybody from the world, from the whole world, the Nashville scene, the New York scene, the European scene, the German NAMM show will be in a few months, and the Latin scene, people from Spain, people from South America. It's the National Association of Music Merchants, but it's not really the national. It's like the World Series. Well, the World Series, America and Canada. This is not just the National Association of Music Merchants. It's the International Association." So he said, "I can't believe how many friends you have. But I got to be honest, of those thousands of friends, I want to hang with the ones that lift me up, that make me feel good, that make me laugh." Not everybody's like that. I've recommended drummers. I'm not going to mention any names. I've recommended some drummers for some really high profile tours. And a week later, "Who else you got?" "What do you mean? So-and-so's a great drummer." "Yeah, they play great, but they're a pain in the you-know-what, because they're always complaining. They don't have the first class seats and they need more leg room. They don't have their hotel room with the putting green in the bowling alley. And, they're complaining. They need more money. They need more of this. It's like the Spinal Tap scene. "Well, if I fold this sandwich, it's still
Right.
half a sandwich." Don't be that person, man.
Right.
Be grateful that you're playing your instrument and people are paying you to play your instrument, and you get to go out and give music to people, and the smiles on their faces. Believe me, Ringo Starr does not tour because he needs the money. He's a Beatle, okay? He's got more money than you could ever need, and he's a very charitable man. He plays because he sees the faces, the smiles, the tears, the people dressed up in Sergeant Pepper outfits, the people with the cutout yellow submarine they made, "Little Help from My Friends." And he feels so much love and he gives so much love back. That's what music can do. It's very healing.
Yeah. Well, great, man. We're already halfway through, and I've only gotten a couple questions out, Greg. I
won't talk as much. I tend to
No,
cut
you're
me off
doing.
too.
No.
You won't offend me. You won't offend me. Just say, "Hey, hold on. Okay, next question." Because I'll talk forever. Trust me.
No way I'm going to cut you off. I love every minute of this. But all right, so we talked about the fact that you're a drummer's drummer, that Ringo Starr, picked you out of everybody he could have picked to be his drummer. But, let's talk about a few other names. How about Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, Andy Summers, Steve Lukather, Larry Carlton, Brian Setzer, and on and on and on. Man, some of the greatest guitar players to ever walk the earth seem to really gravitate towards your playing. Why is it that you think that you have become the drummer of choice for so many of the greatest guitar players that have ever lived, you know?
Oh, thank you. Well, I have a saying, and I learned this from a great guitar player, Tim Pierce. Tim Pierce is one of the most recorded guitar players in history. He lives in LA. He doesn't really tour. He just does tons of albums, tons of TV shows, movies, everything. And one of his sayings one time, I said, yeah, I just came from a session. And he said, oh, cool. And I thought he'd say, who was playing guitar? He didn't say that. He's just like, oh, great. So I told him who was playing guitar. And he goes, and anyway, he said, oh yeah, he says, I've worked with that producer before. And I said, yeah. He said, I'm just glad and honored to be one of the guys on some of these guys' lists. And I thought, one of the guys on some of these guys' lists. You can't be megalomatic and think that you're going to do everything yourself and do everything for everybody. There are a lot of drummers in LA that are really great. And I could name you 20 off the top of my head of guys that work a lot and that are fantastic. And so the thing that I've always tried to do, Caleb, and I know you know this as a player and an educator, I'm not the best at any style. I mentioned Bill Stewart. To me, he's my favorite jazz drummer. Peter Erskine told me he's his favorite jazz drummer, okay? And I've got a lot of favorites in styles. I don't want to be the best rock drummer, the best bebop drummer, the best Afro-Cuban drummer. That would be Daphnis Prieto at University of Miami, or Jimmy Brantley, or Horacio El Negro Hernandez. I'm not from Cuba, okay? I'm from Detroit. Not a lot of Cuban music growing up in Detroit, but I aspire to be the best Afro-Cuban drummer I can be. David Garibaldi was here just before the virus, the lockdown, right? And there's a linear funk drummer that I put on a high pedestal who puts the drummers from James Brown on that pedestal. I'm not trying to be the best linear funk Tower of Power as James Brown drummer, but I sure want to be the best I can be at it. You look at Billy Cobham, double bass, Simon Phillips, Thomas Lang, Marco Miniman, Virgil Donati. I'm not the best double bass drummer in the world, but I want to be the best double bass drummer I can be. So Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, Andy Summers, Frank Gambale, Steve Lukather, many of these guitar players and many instrumentalists of other keyboard players, horn players, singers. One of the reasons I might get the call is because they know that I love all styles of music. I don't love all styles of vocals. I have an issue with super hardcore, like death metal, angry, almost satanic kind of stuff. I don't listen to that, but I love the drumming. I have issues with super hardcore gangster rap and all the F-bombs and all the language and the content. And I don't like to listen to that, but I sure love the drumming and the loops, and I want to learn that. So my goal is to be the best drummer I can be at every single style of music I can be. And hopefully I won't get stumped when I go to an audition or a session or a tour and somebody's got a tune of something that I just can't play. I'm going to go to my hotel room, come back in here to my drum room and work on it. Because that's what gets me out of bed in the morning is like, man, I want to master that Bill Stewart set of eights there. Steve Swallow and John Schofield play. I want to do what he's doing, you know? So anyway, that's kind of what I think might lure me to those people. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so, we've got a whole percussion class watching this in Southern Utah right now with Ed Canlin's school there. And one of his students is asking on that topic, with playing so many styles of music, do you have a favorite genre that you like to play or listen to?
Yeah.
Even though you love everything.
Yeah, I do love everything. And it's like favorite and then 99 others that are close to it. You might guess already by the way I've been talking, but I'm 61. I was born in 1959. And in 1964, my life changed musically. I couldn't really relate to, my parents would put on, at the dinner table, they'd put on albums of Beethoven, Mozart, they put on the London Philharmonic. I just wasn't into it, man. It didn't do anything for me. And they'd even put on Dave Brubeck, and I heard Take Five so many times, I just couldn't believe it. I loved Take Five, but when the Beatles came on the Ed Sullivan Show, man, I could relate to She Loves You, yeah, yeah. If I Fell in Love with You, I could relate to these guys. I could relate to Ringo's drumming. I could relate to the songs, Lennon and McCartney, and George's songs and Ringo's songs. And so my favorite style to this day, and it is a style, is the Beatles. I mean, 275 great songs. They didn't write a bad song. But then that inspired the British invasion of the Rolling Stones, the Turtles, the Who, Led Zeppelin, and then from Seattle going to England, starting a band, Jimi Hendrix, and that whole British invasion. That was the 60s for me. And then growing up in Motown, where 24/7 you had a Motown station from Windsor, Canada, CKLW, the Motor City, and you just heard the Temptations, the Supremes, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, the Jackson 5. So anyway, pop music, great songs with great lyrics that I love to sing. I'm not a great lead singer, but I do sing lead on some stuff, but I'm a pretty darn good background singer, and I love playing and singing backgrounds. I sing on almost every song on the Ringo tours. I sang on almost every song on the David Lee Roth tour. I love having a mic there. You feel more connected, So anyway, pop music is my favorite, and Beatles are the penultimate apex of that pop music. But right under that is the Buddy Rich Big Band, the Maynard Ferguson Big Band. Going to see Woody Herman the first time with LaBarbara playing drums. He looked like Jesus with hair down to his butt and a big old beard. Erskine looked like Jesus when I saw him with Stan Kenton. He was 18 years old. He had a beard, long hair. Anyway, so, there's drawings of Jesus.
Well, Greg, let me jump in there. Funny you should mention Peter Wright, because he's the one that introduced you and I. So grateful to him for
me too.
for that. But speaking about styles, some of your earliest recordings and some of your earliest, recording with Brandon Fields, one of my longtime friends, one of the guys that influenced me on saxophone, just a heavyweight. And then, you're playing in Maynard's band, and you're getting some pretty high profile jazz gigs. And then knock, 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 here comes David Lee Roth to go and join a rock band. And of course, it's really, while, I think people recognize your talents already, for studio work and things like that, wouldn't you agree that it was really that David Lee Roth gig that really raised your profile? And, historically, in the jazz world, and this is coming from, from experience as the guy that was, president of the Jazz Association.
I know.
I've seen way too often that horrible attitude of like jazz music is the most, elevated music and everything else is down here. And if you're playing something else, you're selling out. So, were you accused of selling out once you got that David Lee Roth gig? And did you care? I mean,
I wasn't really accused of. I wasn't. Sorry about that. I wouldn't say I was accused of selling out. I think that people started to realize, holy cow, this guy really loves old Van Halen. I mean, if I had to pick a second favorite rock pop band, it would be the Beatles and old Van Halen, 1978, with David Lee Roth, Michael Anthony, Alex Van Halen on drums, and the late great friend of mine, Eddie Van Halen, on guitar. And You Really Got Me Now, and Unchained, and Hot for Teacher, and Panama, and Dance the Night Away, and all these great songs. That would be my number 2 band, I think. So I was so excited about it. And speaking of like Brandon, John Petitucci, Dave Garfield, Walt Fowler, that really cool band that we played all the time at the Baked Potato. Then we recorded that album. And anyway, I was over. One of my best friends is Dave Wecko, and I love Dave Wecko. I met Dave when I was playing with Maynard Ferguson, and we were playing the Bottom Line, which is no longer a club. It's now part of NYU. Give me a break. Anyway, it's not a club anymore in Manhattan. And he's playing at 7th Avenue South, the Brecker Brothers Club. And he's playing with French Toast with Anthony Jackson, subbing for Peter Erskine. And we became best buds. He goes, oh, I always wanted to play with Maynard's band. I said, oh, I always wanted to play at 7th Avenue South. And we came out to LA. We became dear friends. I was at his wedding and his reception at Chick's house. I played drums on Petitucci's audition tape. And at the wedding, he goes, Chick, this is the guy that was playing drums at the Baked Potato for my upright and electric band, acoustic band, and audition tape. And I met Chick. Well, in 1985, I get the gig with David Lee Roth. And okay, so here's one for you. And Dave, forgive me for telling this story, but it's the truth. I'm over in Italy playing at the Italian NAMM show. And Dave's in the Yamaha booth, and Frank Gambale's playing with them. Frank Gambale is a humongous Beatle fan. But Dave, he's about a year younger than me, I think 2 years maybe. But he didn't get that Beatle bug, right? So I'm just freaking out. And I'm telling Frank Gambale, I'm going to be playing with Ringo. We're going on the road next month. And Dave Wecko goes, you're doing what? I said, I'm playing drums on the Ringo tour. And he says to me, and this is just Dave, just being Dave. He goes, why? And Frank Gambale looks at him, and I look at him, and we both go, why? Are you kidding me? We're going to play Boys. I Want to Be Your Man, Yellow Submarine, Little Help from My Friends. We're going to do all of his solo songs. And we've got all these different all-stars from all these different bands. He just didn't get it, but that God bless him. That's cool. I have a lot of rock friends that think that jazz is the lamest thing in the world, Right. In fact, some of them just go, oh man, it just sounds like a bunch of notes. Or I'm part of Spinal Tap, right? The Spinal Tap joke, because they love jazz, but the Spinal Tap joke, because they're actors, is, why do jazz musicians like, Nigel Tufnell, the guitar player, why do these jazz guitarists play so soft? Some of them sound like the amp isn't even on. They're playing all these notes and they're supposed to be great notes, but why are they playing them so soft? If they were really proud of these notes, they'd play them loud, but why are they playing them so soft? Are they afraid they're not good notes? So anyway, who cares what people think? I don't care what people think about much of anything, whether it's anything that's going on today in the world or whatever. I know what I think. I know what I believe. I know what gets me excited. I love all styles of music. Hey man, if you don't, I had a student here about 2 years ago. No, it was at a clinic, I think. And I gave him a private lesson after the clinic. And he said, it was in LA. Okay. Dude, a lot of people in LA, dude, man, dude, I want to play jazz, dude. And I said, oh, really? I don't really call people dude. I know guys that call women dude. Anyway, dude, I want to play jazz. And I said, wow, great. I'd love to show you some jazz. Do you like Miles Davis? Do you like Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, Sonny Rollins? Do you like Pat Metheny? Do you like Weather Report? And he goes, dude, I don't know who any of those are. No, not really. I said, why do you want to play jazz? And he said, well, I went to this jazz club, Catalina's in Hollywood last week with some friends of mine. And the drummer was playing the band would play and then he would play. It was Vinnie Colaiuta, probably the greatest drummer on the planet. And he didn't know who Vinnie Colaiuta was, but he goes, when the drummer would play his little bit, then the band would play probably Trading Eights or something. He said, when the drummer played, people stood up and clapped. And then they sat down and they kept eating. And then and they clapped. And I said, that's why you want to play jazz? So you can play at a dinner theater and have people stand up? I said, you got to love the style. And then I've had straight ahead jazz guys that are like, I just want to be like post-bop small group. I said, post-bop small. So you wouldn't play in a big band? No, don't want to do that. Mostly brushes, small little Gretsch kit, small group, real soft kind of, just nice tasty stuff. That's what I love the most. I said, well, you live in LA and you're about to get married, you told me. Yeah. And we want to have kids. And I said, how are you going to pay for the rent or the food or car insurance or health insurance or the mortgage? God forbid you buy a house playing post-bop small group jazz only. And he says, Oh, I don't really know. He said, so I think I want you to teach me how to be a rock drummer. I said, well, do you like rock? Do you like AC/DC? Do you like Journey? Do you like old Van Halen, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin? He goes, no, not at all. I said, so you want to be a rock drummer just because you think you're going to make enough money to support your family, but you don't like the style? Nobody's going to hire you because you're only going to get good in that style if you really love playing it. And listen, you got to listen before you even try playing it.
Right. Well, and I, I mean, I think you hit it on the head, and I think, back when I was a kid, you've got a couple years on me.
Yeah.
I'm wrapping up my 40s here.
Yeah, a couple decades.
A couple decades. But, when I was a kid, you could kind of get away with being a jazz drummer or a classical violinist or, a rock guitarist. But I think those days are really long gone.
How about this one, Caleb? Back then, you could get away with being a musician. Mm-hmm. Can you even get away with being a musician in 2020? Well, not this month, not last month, because everything's shut down. So, hey, man, if you're going to be a musician and then and roll that dice and pray about that, and then you're going to segregate that all up and say, I just want to be a post-bop small group drummer, or I just want to be a heavy metal rock drummer, or I'm only into old school funk. Man, your days are numbered.
Right. Well, let's talk about the preparation that you had. I'm really interested in that, and I know we're running out of time here, but I think there are very few drummers, and I think you and I are have mutual friendships with a lot of them, that guys that can be comfortable in a legitimate, rock or pop setting, and also, have the legitimacy with the jazz stuff, like drummers like Steve Smith come to mind. And
he's the penultimate example, Caleb. He's a good friend of both of us. Steve Smith, I met him when I was with Maynard. He wanted to come to my sound check because he was so into Maynard. I wanted to go to his sound check. So he brought me, and this guy was opening up in 1982. He goes, and this is this Canadian guy. He's opening up for us. What's his name? Brian Adams. So, Steve Smith was in one of the biggest rock bands of all time, but all he wanted to do was go back to his hotel room and play me his Vital Information stuff, because he loved that just as much as Journey.
Right, exactly. But I think of you and Steve in this elite class of drummers, and you kind of touched on this earlier, that can legitimately play at a world-class level in a wide variety of styles. And I think a lot of people don't realize that your background not only included listening to and playing pop and rock music, listening and playing jazz music, and working at North Texas in the 1 O'Clock Band, but even drumline, right? I don't know of very many, drum set players that have such a wide background, and that we're able to incorporate all of those into their playing. I mean, how important would you say it is, for other musicians, whether they're drummers or other instrumentalists, to be able to get that broad base of styles, and how do you approach it where you can become, where you avoid this, jack of many trades, master of none. You're a jack of many trades, master of all, and that takes a lot of discipline.
I got a great answer for that. You mentioned drumline. Okay. The number one reason, I got to be honest, I love rudimental drumming. I love snare contests. I got a scholarship to Interlochen on a snare drum solo from the Optimist Club. Talk about positive. The Optimist Club of Michigan gave me a scholarship to Interlochen music school in high school. So anyway, I love rudimental playing, but I'm playing with sticks, okay? And I love playing with brushes. And I thought, okay, drumline. Well, the main reason, besides my chops and rudiment stuff, was because I decided to become not a jazz major, not a performance major. I remember my parents saying, why are you going to be a performance major? You already perform. Why don't you get a job that if you don't make enough money performing, you can make a living with? You teach all these kids in the basement, you love to teach, you teach high school, you even teach some older pros that don't know how to read music, and you're 17 years old. why don't you get a teacher's certificate? Why don't you get a music ed degree? And I said, that's what I'm going to do. So I went to North Texas 4 years. I didn't get a performance degree. I didn't get a jazz performance degree. I got a music ed degree that when I graduated gave me a certificate that I could go to any state in the union and teach elementary, middle school, and high school band. And some colleges, even though some of them required a master's, now it's degree equivalent. And some of them say, oh, we'll give you a doctorate degree equivalent. But anyway, so now I'm at North Texas. And if you're not in the marching band and you don't know how to write out marching band 8 steps to 5 yards grids where the trombones will be louder in the stands if you go, bah, you turn away from the stands, sforzandos, bah. So I took string classes, brass classes, composition classes, music history, marching band, writing out your whole marching band halftime show. Boy, what a pain in the neck that was. I was not into that, but I wanted that degree. But when you say jack of all trades, the one thing I have to be really honest, and I know we have a great Utah percussion school here. The word percussion, okay, it's fine when you're in college, okay? And I did 4 mallet marimba etudes because I needed to, not because I wanted to. I didn't like playing marimba. I didn't like playing xylophone. I didn't like playing timpani. I wanted to play the drum set, okay? But when you move to LA, it's not, oh, you got a music education degree with an emphasis in percussion. Yeah, but don't put me on a film date next to Emil Richards or Bernie Dressel,
Right.
who went to Eastman, who loves bringing his own timpani and marimba. I don't own a marimba. They're very expensive. I don't have anywhere to put it, and I don't want to pay for storage. If I had a gun to my head, I might be able to eke out a nice little 2 mallet xylophone thing on a film date, but that's not my jam. I'm a drum set guy. So I'm not diversified as I should be probably. I got through all my barriers on timpani, on 4 mallet marimba. You don't even hear 4 mallet marimba with the Los Angeles Philharmonic. It's a university solo thing. Oh, we're going to play these 4 mallet marimba. Who uses 4 mallet marimba? Some people love it. Not my thing. I want to play drum set. I'm a specialist, okay? I'm a drum set guy. Yeah, I got really good hands because of marching band, but Buddy Rich has pretty great hands. So does Vinny Colaiuta, right? Dave Wecko. Well, because we work on our rudiments. That's still drum set. There's a snare drum in drum set. So I wanted to put that little caveat, that little disclaimer in there. I did my percussion dues. I got my degree, but I haven't touched a marimba since.
Right. Well, and I think that is why, you are a specialist, but you're a specialist in a wide variety of styles, and it's.
But real quick, I know guys at school that didn't really want to play drum set. They wanted to play xylophone and vibes and timpani, and they live here in LA, and they make so much money because they play on all the movies and TV shows. If you're a TV film recording session musician, you make 10 times what phonograph, they call it, record recording session musicians make because of the union special payments fund. It's just phenomenally, like 10 times as much when you get that check every year from the union special payments fund. So these guys, they're specialists with xylophone, marimba. They've got all the little toys. They own timpani. They even have their own chimes, who has their own chimes, but they make 10 times as much as the guy that's just doing albums. So I try to be the drum set guy on movies and TV shows and albums. So you can do both.
That's fantastic. Now we're almost out of time, but one of the questions I've got, of all the things that I tell people about you, that you're this incredible all-around drummer. You're one of my favorite people to hang out with, but you're also one of the bravest people I know. And people say, well, how do you know he's one of the bravest people? And I say, well, because Gregg actually, even knowing the history of all the drummers in the band, still decided to accept the drum chair in Spinal Tap, realizing the peril it would put him in and the risk of spontaneously combusting on the drum throne. So what led you to have the courage to accept that position, knowing that you were taking, your life into your own hands? What was that like?
Well, that's a really great, now there's some fear and some pressure because, when you find out the lineage of the Spinal Tap drummers, one of them died in a very bizarre gardening accident. Another one of them died because they choked on vomit, but it was someone else's vomit. And another one of them just, all they found was a green globule on his drum throne. So I was very worried. And when my dad did my drum cartage, my drum tech at the Greek Theater for a Spinal Tap show years ago, he went up to Derek Smalls, the bass player, and he said, Derek, I'm a little worried about my son here, Skippy Scuffleton. That's my name when I'm with Spinal Tap. He said, I'm worried about my son Skippy, and I know the lineage of your drummers dying. And Harry Shearer, Derek Smalls looks around and he goes, he's all in costume. He says, we've got the place secured, bud. He's going to be okay. We played Live Earth 2007. It was Ringo's birthday, 7707. It was for the big Live Earth thing at Wembley Stadium, 80,000 people. The first band in the morning at 10 a.m. was like the first book of the Bible, Genesis, right? So Genesis, Phil Collins, Chester Thompson, they're playing Genesis, opens the show, 80,000 people. And there was Metallica, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, the Foo Fighters, Kasabian, Madonna.
Oh, we lost
all these.
There you go.
All these different bands, and every bass player from every band came out with a bass on, 18 of them, and played Big Bottom with us. So if you go on YouTube right after we finish this Zoom, anybody, and you type in YouTube, Spinal Tap, Big Bottom, Live Earth, you'll see me counting the band up, and 18 bass players come out and play. Hetfield from Metallica, even the big money guy that passed away a few years ago, Paul Allen. He was playing bass. He was up there as a fan. It was so much fun. I love being in Spinal Tap.
Now I got to tell you, I actually own the action figures, the Spinal Tap action figures of Nigel Tufnell and Derek Smalls, and but there's no Gregg Bissonette action figure. So I'm just
No, I wasn't in the movie. My brother took. I think there's probably there might not even be an action figure for Rick Parnell, the original drummer, because
there's not. Nope.
Yeah, he left, and so it's just the three of those guys. But my friend CJ Vanston, who's a great keyboard player producer, he's the musical director of Spinal Tap. He brought me into Spinal Tap in the 90s, and so we're the musicians we're in the band, but we're not those three guys. We weren't in the movie. I know. Yeah, but I do get a chance to. They wanted to re-record the original album. And I said, why are you re-recording the original album? He said, we're going to go into the Village in Santa Monica, and we're going to do the whole album. They even gave me songwriting on Jazz Rock Odyssey because it's a jam. And they said the reason is Guitar Hero wants to do a Spinal Tap Guitar Hero. Now, we wrote those songs, and there's that side of the publishing end of it, but the mechanicals, why should Guitar Hero use those tracks from Universal or whoever the label is when we can record it and we can own the masters and we'll license that to Guitar Hero?
Right.
So I got to do the whole album, and it's called Spinal Tap Back from the Dead.
Right. Oh no, that's fantastic. No, I'm such a huge Spinal Tap fan, so that's I love the fact that you're involved with them. Well, Gregg, our time unfortunately has come to a close, and it feels like we just barely started. And I've got a million more questions for you. Luckily, I've got your number, and you and I can hang out and chat some more some other time. But we want to thank you so much for joining us on the Houseguest series here, and with students all over the world. And before we go, leave us with your best piece of advice for these young musicians from all over the world. What's the one piece of advice that's most impacted you, or that you'd love to share with these guys to cap this off today?
Well, people talk all the time about this golden rule. I don't see the golden rule in the Torah or in the Bible or in the any book whatsoever in history. I don't see this golden rule. And a lot of people say, well, it's treat other people the way they treat you, man. That sounds like an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. I've always heard this mysterious golden rule as treat others the way you wish they would treat you, or do unto others as you would have them do unto you, in old speak. But anyway, don't just treat people the way they treat you, because that's not gonna make anything better. If you want to play and you want to do recording sessions or tour with bands or be in a fun band that plays on weekends, or you just want to get together with friends and jam, try lifting people up. Try complimenting people, because everybody's got some insecurities, and everybody loves to be complimented. I don't care who it is. Ringo loves to be complicated. You complimented. You introduced me to Herbie Hancock, and I made him smile when I told him some stories about taking lessons and being a friend of Tony Williams, and how much Herbie Hancock, the man, inspired me from interviews, and I made Herbie Hancock smile. So I complimented Herbie Hancock, right? Because you introduced me to him. Anyway, try to lift people up and try to treat people the way you wish they would treat you. That's I think my best advice for the day.
Well, I love it. And just to cap it off, Gregg, you didn't say this earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and say it because you're too humble. But, when it comes to the reason why Ringo Starr would choose you, or all those great guitar players we talked about, I think the reason that you get hired more than just about anybody out there is because not only do you compliment people, with your comments and lift them up with your words, but you compliment them musically. You make everybody else look on stage look great when you're playing drums. And I think that is the mark of really, just the finest musicianship that you can have, is making other musicians look their best. So, Gregg,
thank you, Caleb. Thank you.
as
That's my goal.
I remain one of your greatest fans, as I'm sure many of these students watching this today are. Thank you so much for sharing your gifts, your talent, and your time with us today, Gregg. I love you, my friend, and we'll talk again real soon. Thanks to everybody for joining us here on Soundhouse House Guest Series. Gregg, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, my friend.
Love you too, Caleb. Thanks for